So we are all here for a fireside chat on mobility. What could be more fun? What could be more engaging, right? Transportation, the way it looks and feels is changing. We're here to talk about how we're expanding mobility across all modes in all different spaces. Each one of our panelists today are experts in their own fields. They're going to share with you innovation in technology, expanding mobility options, and how this is going to benefit our transportation network. And we're going to talk about how mobility and land use, real estate is very linked, and how that working together is part of the solution in transportation. My name is Aileen Bouclé. I'm the Executive Director of the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization. And with me today is Claudia Miro. She is the Director of Business Development and Government Affairs of Freebee. Patrick Goddard, President of Brightline. By the way, Achiever of the Week, Miami today. Patrick, you make us proud. Thank you. And last but not least, Roamy Valera, who is President of Automotus. At this time, I'd like to start with Roamy. Please give us a little bit about your background and your field of expertise and what you do in our transportation and mobility space.
Thank you, Aileen. Good morning. Roamy Valera, I am President of Automotus. I have been in the parking, mobility, transportation industry for about 34 years. And I was a kid when I started, when the commissioner kind of used to make fun of me when I was parking cars. So good to see you. Thank you for the invitation. Automotus is a CAPP management company. We're a startup emerging technology that we automate public right-of-way. So imagine having a toll on the commercial, managing or automating commercial loading zones, commercial vehicles in the public right-of-way. So that's what we do.
Excellent. Very important in our space. Patrick
Goddard. I'm the president of Brightline Trains. We're an intercity passenger rail system connecting South Florida and Central Florida. We've been operating in South Florida since about 2018, and we're about to launch our service into Orlando in a few short months.
Excellent, Patrick. Thank you. Claudia.
Good morning, everyone. Claudia Miro. I am the Director of Business Development and Government Affairs for Freebee. Freebee has been around for 11 years, and we specialize in first mile, last mile service, really connecting communities. And currently we operate a fleet of over 150 vehicles everywhere from Kissimmee all the way down to Isla Morada in the Florida Keys. My role is to continue to expand that footprint throughout the state of Florida and beyond.
Wonderful, Claudia. Thank you. Thank you to our panelists. Let's jump into this. So let's get into mobility. Claudia, Freebee is very much a first last mile solution to our network. That is so critical. How we get to that first and last mile is really the most important solution, right? All right, tell us about Freebee. You're in this space. What are you doing? How does that look like? How are we going to travel in the future?
So absolutely, we do see Freebee as the future of mobility. We are that link to connecting communities. And we play a very important role in the transportation ecosystem to get folks out of their cars and into a service that is just as reliable, economic, and safe as it would be as if you go grab your car keys and go outside and get into your car. And that's important because we're getting cars off the road, thereby reducing traffic, reducing the use of those single occupancy vehicles. So all of that is important. We're also helping free up the parking availability that we all know here, especially in South Florida, right? Every time you're trying to find a parking space, it's very difficult. So when you get in a Freebee, you're doing that, and hey, you're getting picked up in a luxury Tesla, so you really can't beat that, right? And it's free. That's the best part about it.
Excellent, Claudia. So how many of us love Uber and Lyft at the right time, in the right place, in the right moment? Is Uber a good option? We love having that on our phones, right? So I want to recognize Freebee as being a partner with Miami-Dade TPO demonstration program and working with us for on-demand mobility across the county to and from smart plan stations that exist today and in the future. But Patrick, step into this, lean into this conversation. Tell us what Brightline is doing in this space and the overall context of what you're doing here and in the state of Florida.
So we set out to develop an intercity passenger rail system. It's the first privately funded intercity passenger rail system in the United States in over 100 years. Passenger rail fell off the map in this country about 50, 60 years ago with the introduction of the motor vehicle and the Federal Highway Act everybody decided that they were going to drive cars, that was independence for them, and really abandoned passenger rail. While they did that, Europe and Asia doubled down on their passenger rail, and that's why in the United States we have one of the best freight rail networks in the world, but we have an embarrassing passenger rail network. So when our sponsor acquired Florida East Coast Industries and the Florida East Coast Railroad back in 2007, they had a vision for creating passenger rail in the state of Florida. It's something that's been talked about for decades in this state. There's been a couple of false starts where the state received money, gave it back, and ultimately our sponsor decided around 2012 that they were going to go and build it privately. We went around the world, we looked at other intercity passenger rail operators, and we were able to discern pretty readily that these are profitable ventures. And if you look at Italo, if you look at even the Acela in the Northeast, which is the only real example of intercity passenger rail in the United States today, if you look at that entity on its own, it makes an EBITDA of about $500 million a year. Unfortunately, the rest of Amtrak loses about $1.5 billion a year. However, these are profitable ventures. We started running our service in South Florida in 2018. We ran for 15 months. We closed for about 15 months during COVID. We reopened in November of 21. Our trains today, we run hourly service between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. We added stops in Boca Raton and Aventura. Our trains today carry about 7,000 people a day. I think this month we'll carry about 180,000 passengers. Our trains are at capacity for South Florida already. We're seeing people, adoption for these systems takes time. It's taken us a couple of years to see the adoption that we have today. And it's really incredible to see people are starting to believe in a car alternative lifestyle. Solutions like Freebee, we work with Circuit at Brightline, but there's now a way for you to live a car alternative lifestyle. We want to be able to facilitate that. But really for us, it's not about those shorter distance trips. It's about taking people from South Florida to Central Florida, that 235-mile journey that nobody wants to do, and making it productive, making it eco-friendly, making it safer, making it less susceptible to traffic and weather, and making it a great experience. That's what we're focused on. So we're looking forward to launching that service between South Florida and Central Florida in the next couple of months. We're looking at an expansion from Central Florida into the Tampa market, and we're also working on our second corridor in the United States, which would connect Los Angeles to Las Vegas.
Patrick, thank you for everything that you do, what Brightline is doing, not just for Miami-Dade County and our region, but in the state of Florida. Aren't we lucky to be one of only 2 locations in the entire nation with private passenger rail operations? And of this one of 2, we're way ahead of the game. Brightline is constructing, implementing, providing service. The other state, I won't mention, they're still in their planning stage, really in the last 10 years. Brightline, you're a great partner. Thank you. So let's switch it up a bit, right? We have a lot of technology that we're looking at and it's changing the way we move. Roamy, you are the expert today on this panel on curbside management and how technology is helping us to change it up, because at the end of the day, all the rail service, all the Freebee service, first, last mile, and how we're getting around is only as good as our network in terms of gridlock and how we manage our curb space and delivery. And listen, we're a major hub for freight and logistics and delivery. How do we manage our space? What do we do about trucks loading and unloading? How are we moving around? Can you talk to us about the future of how we're managing that and what your service provides to help clear congestion and keep us moving forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting statistics of whether since COVID. We've all seen the increase in commercial activity in most of our cities, and we know that a lot of the services and products that we receive are delivered by commercial vehicles. Urban cores have seen an increase of commercial vehicles in the tune of about 50%. Over the last couple of years, and that number is going to continue to increase, and we're seeing that as a result of that, there is just a lack of capacity for these commercial vehicles to load or unload, creating then congestion by double parking, creating then safety hazards by blocking bike lanes, bus zones, etc. And as a result, also generating a tremendous amount of emissions that also is, adds to the public safety. So we're working directly with municipalities, in particular with Miami-Dade County and Miami Parking Authority. Locally, Miami-Dade County just received a grant, a SMART grant for a couple $1 million to implement these commercial loading zones management. And what we do is through vision software, we track the types of modality that are using the space. We track the dwell time, and we encourage that dwell time to be reduced, and also for these spaces to become readily available for the commercial loading and unloading. And as a result of the technology deployment and the city partners that we work with, we're seeing an improvement of turnover, meaning the space is becoming available to the tune of 30 to 40%. And we're seeing a reduction in dwell time by about 20%, which also means that congestion is reduced pretty significantly in these streets.
That's an incredible statistic. Listen, this is very important. How we move passengers, but goods, freight, logistics, we're a hub for that here. And if anyone here has anything on them today, from your pen to your phone to anything that didn't arrive in its last mile by a truck, come and see me after. I want to meet you, and I want to know what that product is that you own that didn't arrive through our network in its last mile in a truck. And I challenge you, if you don't have it on you today, but you have it at home, come and meet with me after, because I want to know who you are and I want to know what that product is. I don't know of any. So thank you for what you're doing. Can you tell us about how your data sharing is helping on a larger network?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one of the challenges that most municipalities, most government entities have with the private sector is how is the data shared? So we work with open APIs. We follow the Open Mobility Forum, which is encourages and sets standards for how data is collected and how data is shared among the different platforms that exist, and specifically in government, and that's how we do. That's how we share our data.
Roamy, that is outstanding. Thank you for being a leader in that and for giving us this critical data. This does help move the needle forward. Let's switch it up again. Here we are talking about mobility in all its forms. Let's go back to Claudia and Patrick. Talk to me about micro mobility. Does Freebee what is the future vision from Freebee in terms of integrating micro mobility as the overall network service? What are your thoughts?
So currently, the way that we operate is we work with communities to really tailor to their needs. The greatest thing about Freebee is that it's highly customizable, right? We understand that every city has a different look, a different feel, and therefore different transportation issues, and they're gonna have different transportation goals. So we work hand in hand with every single community to make sure that we're meeting those needs. Now, to give you an example, right? Currently, we're operating in 22 of the 34 cities right here in our backyard in Miami-Dade County, and they're all very diverse. So to give you an example, you might have a community that comes to you and says, you know what, we have these communities like Hialeah and Miami Lakes that they'll say, geofence the entire city so that you can go wherever you want within that geofence. But then we have cities like down south, Florida City. Florida City is one of the most underserved communities in South Florida. And believe it or not, Florida City is considered what we call an urban food desert. What does that mean? That means that there are no supermarkets in a city. Can you imagine living in a city without a supermarket? And a lot of the buildings there are affordable housing communities. And a lot of those residents don't own vehicles. So they're no longer what we call your choice riders. They need to depend on mobility, and for something as basic as buying groceries, right? So how do we do this with Florida City? We do a geofence around Florida City, and then we geofence certain areas outside of Florida City to the neighboring city, Homestead. And we have a geofence around the Publix over there, the supermarket, another one around Baptist Hospital, because if something happens, they have an emergency, they need to be able to get to medical care. We have another one around the Miami-Dade College, because we also have students that need to get to school. And then the other geofence that we have is to the train station, because a lot of these folks need to travel further to get to their place of employment. So that's just one example. And then we also operate a service in South Beach. Not like you might think we operate the service in South Beach. We're not going to the clubs, we're not on Ocean Drive. We merely exist to service the 16 senior housing buildings that are in South Beach. Bet you didn't know that there was a lot of senior housings in South Beach. So our bread and butter in South Beach is basically taking the seniors to the supermarket, to the doctor's appointment, to the grocery store. That is what we do day in and out for South Beach. So you can see how it kind of changes. And then in Coral Gables, where I live, we have a geofence around the downtown area and really focused on moving people while they're in the downtown area so that you can go from a museum to your favorite place to dine or shop and just really move people that way. And I think that brings us to a very important point that a lot of people don't really realize about Freebee. It's that we're not just a transportation solution, right? Freebee is also a very powerful economic development tool because we're able to really drive traffic to the front doorsteps of the local businesses, right? We're app-based, so if you've used other rideshare services, you go on the app, click a button, and immediately you can request your ride. But beyond that, while you're on our app, you're also immersed in everything and anything that's happening in your immediate community. So if I open the app in Coral Gables, I'm going to see everything that's happening in Coral Gables. If I open it in Key Biscayne, I'm going to see what's happening in Key Biscayne, and so on and so forth, right? So that ability and all that you're seeing there is free advertising. We are partnering with the local businesses by offering them free advertising on our app so that folks are able to get to their businesses. And here's the thing, to incentivize, because the goal here is we are trying to create as many car optional communities as possible, right? Getting people out of their cars as a choice. Everybody here in Miami-Dade County, we love to drive our Mercedes-Benz, our BMWs, right? We love that. So we have really figured out how to get people out of their nice cars and get them into our nice cars, right?
So Claudia, I'm going to step in here. Car optional. Who likes that sound? Who likes that term? Car optional? Come on, there's more of us. We want a car optional network, don't we? Okay, raise your hand if you want to be a single occupant vehicle in congestion every single day without any options. All right, I've got someone right here. I've got a network for you.
They exist. They exist.
So car optional. Hey, Patrick, I'm going to have you step into this conversation, and what I want you to do for us is do what no one can do better. Give us a perspective from the micro mobility to the macro. But before you do, let's take a quick survey. Who here is in our public right-of-way space on e-bikes or scooters? You can confess. Go ahead. Commissioner Lastra, thank you for being a leader in that. That's right, micromobility, e-bike, scooters. Do you know anybody? Have you been a regular cyclist on the right-of-way and somebody's whizzing by you, almost, like near misses? Okay, that's micromobility. Patrick, talk to us the micromobility space and macro, the future of high-speed rail. Bring it home. Talk to us.
Well, I think this car optional lifestyle or car alternative lifestyle is something that exists in lots of other parts of the world but does not exist here. So how do you bring it to life? What's happened in the last decade or so with technology is, all of these different modes of transportation have existed, some of them for decades, some of them are new. So this is really a moment of convergence where you have new modes of transportation that are all connected through technology, and being able to conduct a multimodal trip before was very clunky. I needed to come up with like 3/4 for the bus, and then I needed to buy a ticket for the train, and then I needed to call an Uber, and then I needed to walk a half a mile. So now with the emergence of something that's called mobility as a service, or MaaS, there are now tools that bring all of those different modes together in one digital environment. So you can actually plan, pay for, and be ticketed for a trip from door to door. So at Brightline, when we relaunched in November, we introduced a product called Brightline Plus, which effectively was a fleet of eco-friendly vehicles that ranged from golf carts to 15-passenger vans, and we had some Teslas in there as well, that allowed people to book from where they were originating to the train station, get on the train, get off the train, get into another mode of transportation, and get to their final destination.
Can I say, Patrick, I've tried it and I absolutely love this service. Anybody else try it? I mean, this is car optional at its best.
And that's the vision. The vision is to be able to give people, people care about their experience. And the experience is really has two dimensions. It has the physical environment that you're in. So are you going to be on a mode of transportation that doesn't smell very good and nobody's friendly and you might encounter some strange people, right? And then there's or do you want to have a nice experience where it's clean and friendly and safe, right? So I think focusing on clean and friendly and safe across all of the modes is critically important, and that's where the public sector, I think, is working hard to get there.
Yes, we are, and a great experience is what I've always had on Brightline. Patrick, talk to us about the future of high-speed rail for 2 minutes, because I have a burning question for Roamy on
Sure.
our federal, state, and local policies. But what's the future of high-speed rail in the United States?
Like Europe and Asia, the United States needs to get caught up on 50 years of ineffectiveness in terms of implementation of systems. We got to catch up on 50. We're 50 years behind Europe and Asia. There are about a dozen corridors around the United States that connect densely populated cities that are connected by congested highways that fall into the 250 to 400 mile distances, so too short to fly, too long to drive. And what we've done is we've taken advantage of existing transportation corridors like highways and existing railroads to be able to implement systems like Brightline in Florida and on the West Coast. And I think that there are several other opportunities like that we and I think others are going to pursue. We've done a lot of enablement at the federal government level to be able to get grants for these kinds of projects. So you're going to be hearing more about that over the next couple of years.
Excellent, Patrick. Thank you for that. That's great news. I don't know about you. High-speed rail in the United States, we need that, right? Thank you. Roamy, all of these technologies, new and emerging technologies, it's moving the dial, it's helping us redefine transportation and mobility. From your perspective, what can federal, state, and local level governments be doing to help private sector, bring these new and emerging technologies into mobility and make it a reality for all of us?
Yeah, it is one of the biggest blockers for emerging technologies to basically deploy, a concept or a software product that can enhance what's happening today in the mobility world, but yet you face, lack of federal guidelines, state and local guidelines, and when you try to assert those, it just becomes very difficult. So what we're seeing is, for example, in Vision software, we're trying to basically automate a piece of public right-of-way, just like a toll. A few years ago, remember, most of us had to stop at a booth and pay and create, traffic, congestion, dwell time. Well, those things got moved away, and now everything is, by registration, subscription, etc. And the legislators, approved that, that legislation, that policy, because it made sense. It made sense because the technology had improved. We got to do the same for, micromobilities companies. We got to do the same for Vision software, and that has to move. We can't stay 50 years behind. We got to advance. The policy component of it has to stay concurrent with the emerging technologies.
Roamy, that's so important. Thank you. Really, my organization, the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization, is a federally mandated agency. We are a policy board, policy framework board with jurisdictional authority over federal transportation funds, prioritization and programming, and expanding mobility and finding ways to integrate new and emerging technologies at its core is our mission. And the partnership that we have with each of you is really a representation of how we accomplish that together, public and private sector. I really do want to engage you, the audience, and I've already have a request from a question on one member of our audience, which I'm going to give it to you in a second, but I can't do that without talking about our transportation and land use linkage and real estate. Who here knows that Miami-Dade County has transitioned from transit-oriented development to transit-oriented communities? That next level. Oh, Commissioner Lastra, thank you. Our partners here know that. They're on the forefront of that. Thank you for that. We have Brightline in leadership roles on that. And also the way Freebee is moving us around is getting us into a more transit-oriented community. And we can't do that without our curb space, Roamy, so thank you. Commissioner Lastra, you had a question for this panel, please?
Thank you all. Thank you all for joining today. I wanted to get each of your thoughts and opinions on the importance of workforce housing, transit-oriented communities, and how it impacts each of you. I mean, I think the driverless experience is so important, especially for affordable and workforce. So really, that additional expense is undoable. So, love to get each of your thoughts on transit-oriented communities. And
That's a question. That's a phenomenal question. Claudia.
I love that question. And I love it because it's very important to understand how each community moves. And one of the things that we use our technology and our data to identify is, in every time we start a service within a community, it's always started as a pilot project. And during that 12-month phase, what we're doing is we're collecting data. And what kind of data are we collecting? We're figuring out what are the times of days that people are using the service? Where is it? We have, heat maps. Where are they going to? Where are they coming from? Because I think it's very important to understand how each community is moving, how they're using the service. Because if you're providing a service that no one is using, then you have to understand why. And if they're using it and there's peak times and there's areas, then you need to kind of tailor the service to that. And that's one of the things that we really do. Sometimes when we set up a service, you have areas that are asking for the service a little bit more, and we understand we need to expand our geofence, or we need to add a vehicle, or we need to expand our service hours to really meet those needs, because maybe this community has a high workforce, right? Maybe this community is dependent on transit, and they really need it to get to places where they live, work, play, right? They really need to do that. So we like to focus on the specific needs of the community to make sure that we understand that, and then at the same time, take that data and see how we can help in other areas like sustainability. We're able to collect so much data when it comes to air quality and carbon emission and all those different things that we like to share back with the city, so they understand what's happening locally in each community.
And Claudia, thank you for that. That's really what Freebee does every day. Before jumping to Patrick, I really want to switch to Roamy on this question. How does managing our curbside right-of-way really add to a transit-oriented community environment that we are building, a sustainable community that we're building today?
Yeah, if you're enhancing, the accessibility of commercial goods and services to a community, then you're creating, equality at all levels, right? It's necessary that traffic moves, commercial activity moves, continues to move, and that commercial activity continues to increase year over year. And we know that automobiles are going to decrease in numbers. So as that community continues to to scale, that community continues to have those greater demands, access to the commercial vehicles, to be able to produce that, it's super significant. One of the key indicators for commercial companies right now is how much money they lose on missed deliveries, and those missed deliveries are caused by congestion, traffic that impacts not only the individuals that are working in that environment, but also the cost of goods increase because of that.
Plus, we want our stuff when we want it, when we need it, and yeah, it's very important to each of us. Patrick, transportation and land use, that space, the linkage, Brightline's perspective.
Well, Brightline doesn't deliver a specific solution around that, but I will give you my point of view from an in a Florida context. The South Florida region in particular, the entire state, but the South Florida region in particular is growing very rapidly. And urbanization is, we're seeing a lot of growth, particularly around our infrastructure, US 1 and East. And it's becoming increasingly less affordable for people to be able to live in those areas. But that's where the employment centers are. So how do you get people there? So we think about it as an ecosystem. And although Brightline isn't for everybody, what Brightline has done is it's put an infrastructure asset through the middle of the state that other systems now want to connect to. And, if you look at our Miami Central facility where we are connecting Metro Rail, Tri-Rail, Metro Mover, we're doing the similar work at the Orlando Airport where we're looking to connect with Sunrail. So providing all of that connectivity so people can live this car alternative lifestyle. They can get from where they work to where they live. The example of Sunrail, for example, it's a north-south system in Orlando that really covers all of the places where people live, but doesn't get anybody to where they work. So with our Tampa expansion, we would be able to connect Sunrail into the airport and to the theme park areas. That would be transformative for that region. So I think working, across the private and public sectors to find solutions to get not just to get transportation out to some of these areas where people can afford to live, and creating more places where people can afford to live and work, but looking at reducing their travel time and improving their quality of life. You just need to look at the BRT program down in South Dade, where you're going to cut people's commute time by 45 minutes. That's going to be transformative for people's lives and their employment opportunities. And those are the kinds of opportunities we should be continuing to pursue.
Absolutely. The South Dade Transitway, that's a game changer. Our community doesn't know because we've never had bus rapid transit. So I'm so excited. First quarter of next year when we launch that service, it's going to be a game changer. It's going to really change the way people move. And Patrick, as you were saying, Europe is ahead of us in high speed, right? But everything that each of you are doing in the mobility space is helping bringing us closer to that key element of density in our land use that needs to be a part of the ecosystem to sustain these options, the permanent feeder pattern into the network that supports the major investments of government. So we're wrapping up, but I have one last question from my panel. I'm looking for a thumbs up and thumbs down only because I'm being told we're out of time. Urban air mobility, the future of transportation mobility in passenger and freight. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you see yourself working urban air mobility in the future? Patrick?
For sure.
Claudia?
Absolutely.
I'm going to have both thumbs up. Thank you so much. You've been an amazing group, and this has been an amazing panel. For this panel, we can do better. Yes, thank you. Have a great rest of your event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Aileen.
you, everyone. Thank you.